Hello everyone and very welcome back to my channel English Story with Ella. In this channel you can learn English through the story. At the end of each story you can learn the meaning of difficult words. So today we have an exciting story about Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes and the Blue Diamond. Chapter 1. An Old Hat. My name is Dr. Watson, and I'm a good friend of the famous detective Sherlock Holmes. 2 days after Christmas last year, I went to his house, 221B Baker Street. I wanted to say Happy Christmas to him. When I arrived, I found him in the sitting room. He was by the window with some newspaper next to him. There was an old hat on a chair near him, and he had a magnifying glass in his hand. "You're working on something," I said. "What is it?" "A hat," said Holmes. "Sit down and look at that interesting old hat over there." I sat down. It was cold out in the street, but it was nice and warm in Holmes' sitting room. "Why are you interested in that old hat?" "Is it from a crime?" I asked. Holmes laughed. "Not a crime, no," he said. "I got it from Peterson, the doorman at the Baker Street Hotel. He found it in the street on Christmas Day. He also found a dead bird, a good fat Christmas goose, at the same time. He gave them to me to look at. I gave the goose back to him this morning. He's cooking it at his house now, and he's going to eat it for dinner tonight. First it was a hat, and now you're talking about a goose," I said. "I don't understand." "Then let's start when it all started," said Holmes. At about 4 o'clock in the morning of Christmas Day, Peterson went home after work. When he got to Tottenham Court Road, he saw, in the street in front of him, a tall man with a goose over his shoulder. Peterson walked behind him for some time. There were some young men in the street in front of them. Suddenly, one of them hit the tall man's hat off his head, and it fell into the road. Then the tall man tried to hit the young man with his walking stick, but by accident he broke the window of a shop behind him. At that moment, Peterson ran to the man to help him, but the tall man ran away. When he ran, he left his Christmas bird in the street next to his hat. The young man ran away at the same time. So Peterson took the goose and the hat home with him. And that next day, he gave them to me. There was an interesting little ticket on the goose's left leg, said Holmes. It said, "For Mr. and Mrs. Henry Baker." We can find the letter H, B in the hat too. "Oh, the owner of the hat and the goose is called Henry Baker," I said. "Yes," answered Holmes. "But my dear Watson, this doesn't help us very much. There are hundreds of Henry Bakers in London. I gave the goose back to Peterson this morning." He went on, and I said to him, "Have this for your dinner." I didn't want to go bed, you know. "Did Mr. Baker put an advertisement in the newspaper about his hat and goose?" I asked. No, answered Holmes. Then how can we find him? Well, maybe his head can help us, said Holmes. Here's my magnifying glass, Watson. Now you be a detective for a moment or two. What can you tell me about the owner of this hat? I took the magnifying glass and looked at the hat. It was black but old and very, very dirty. I saw the letters HB in it. For me, it was no different from any other old black hat. I can see nothing, I said, and I gave the hat back to my friend. Excuse me, Watson. You do see, but you don't think about what you see. All right, I said. What can you see in this hat? The owner of this hat is an intelligent man, said Holmes. He was once rich and is now poor. His wife loved him once, but she doesn't love him now. And he's 30 or 40 years old. Well, maybe I'm slow, Holmes, but I don't understand, I said. Why is he an intelligent man, do you think? Holmes put the hat on his head. It came down to his nose. This is a big hat. A man with a big hat has a big head. And a man with a big head has a big brain. A man with a big brain thinks a lot. But you say he was once rich and is now poor. Why? The hat is 3 years old. I remember these hats were in old shops then. They were very expensive too. 3 years ago, this man bought a good hat and he was rich then. But he hasn't got any money to buy a new hat now. So, these days, he is poor. All right, I said. What do you say he's in his 30s or 40s? How does the hat tell you this? Well, when I looked carefully at the hat with my magnifying glass, I could see some gray hairs in it. People usually get gray hair in their 30s or 40s. I see. But what about his wife? You say she doesn't love him because the hat is very dirty. When a woman loves her husband, she cleans his hat for him. Maybe he hasn't got a wife. Yes, she has. Remember the ticket on the goose's leg? Ah, yes, I said. You have an answer for everything. At that moment, the door opened and Peterson, the hotel doorman, ran into the room. He was very excited. The goose, Mr. Holmes. The goose, I said. What about the goose? Asked Holmes. Did it fly off through the kitchen window? No, Mr. Holmes. My wife found this in the bird. Peterson opened his hand. There was a beautiful blue diamond in it. Let's go to the chapter 2. Chapter 2. The Blue Diamond. When Sherlock Holmes saw the blue diamond in the doorman's hand, he sat up. Well, well, Peterson, he said. What a wonderful thing to find in a goose. Do you know what you have in your hand? I think it's a diamond, Mr. Holmes. Is it expensive? Yes, it is, said Holmes. This is the Countess of Morcar's blue diamond. It disappeared a week ago. How do you know that? I said. Watson, you must read the newspapers more often. There is an advertisement in the Times today about it. Here, look.
Holmes gave the advertisement to me. Then Holmes spoke to the doorman. It's a very expensive jewel, Peterson. The Countess paid about £20,000 for it. Last week, someone took it from her rooms in the Cosmopolitan Hotel. Now the Countess wants to get her diamond back. She says that she's going to give £1,000 to the person who finds it.
£1,000? cried Peterson excitedly. Then, without saying more, he sat down in the chair between us. First he looked at Holmes, and then he looked at me. The diamond disappeared 5 days ago, I think, I said. Yes, answered Holmes. They say a young man, John Horner, took it. Here's a newspaper report about the case. Holmes gave an old newspaper to me, and a diamond disappears from the Cosmopolitan Hotel. The Countess of Morcar's blue diamond disappeared from her room at the Cosmopolitan Hotel on the 22nd of this month. The police think John Horner, 26 years old, took the diamond from a jewel box when he went to repair the window in the room. James Ryder, the assistant manager of the hotel, told the court, I took Horner to the Countess's room, but then I went away for some time. When I came back, Horner wasn't there, and I found the open box without the jewel in it on the table next to the bed. Catherine Cusack, the Countess's maid, spoke next. I heard Mr. Ryder call, and I ran to the Countess's room. Then I found Ryder with the jewel box in front of him. The police found Horner at his home later that day, but they couldn't find the diamond. Later, Detective Bradstreet spoke to the court. When I said, "You're a diamond thief," Horner hit me. Soon after that, Horner told the court angrily, "I didn't take the Countess's diamond. I'm not a thief." Bradstreet then told the court, "Horner went to prison once before for being a thief. I say he took the diamond." The case goes to the High Court next week. Well, that's the newspaper report about the diamond, said Holmes. Now we need to find out how the jewel left the Countess of Morcar's room in the Cosmopolitan Hotel and arrived in Tottenham Court Road in a goose. You see, Watson, there's a crime in this case. Here's the diamond. The diamond came from the goose, and the goose came from Mr. Henry Baker, the man with the old hat. I know you weren't very interested when I told you all about Mr. Baker, but now we must find him. Where and how does he come into the case of the blue diamond? The answer to these two questions is very important. But how can we find him? I asked. Through a newspaper advertisement, answered Holmes. He took a pen and began to write. Did you leave a goose and a black cat some days ago in Tottenham Court Road? Are you called Henry Baker? Please come to 221 B Baker Street this evening at 6:30 to get your things. There, that says it all, I think, said Holmes. Yes, but is he going to read it? I asked. Yes, Watson, I think he is. He's a poor man, remember? At the time he was scared because of his accident with the shop window. But now I believe he feels very sorry about running away and thinks, why did I leave that bird in the street? Maybe he looked for a newspaper advertisement about it yesterday. I think he's going to look again today, too. What's more, we've got his name in the advertisement. His friends are going to see it, and they will tell him about it. Yes, I see, I said. Holmes gave some money to the doorman and said, Peterson, please go down to the newspaper offices and put this advertisement in all the evening newspapers. Very good, sir. And do you want to keep the diamond here, sir? Yes, Peterson. And I say, Peterson, after you leave the newspaper offices, can you buy a goose for me? I want a new bird for Mr. Henry Baker when he comes. Your family is eating the old one for dinner today, so he can't have that. The doorman went out of the door and down the street. Let's go to the next chapter. Chapter 3. Mr. Henry Baker. Holmes took the blue diamond in his hand and looked at it. What a beautiful thing, he said. Look at the wonderful colors in it, dark blues and cold whites. This diamond comes from the south of China, near the Amoy River. It's only 20 years old, and it's a young thing. But already there are many terrible crimes because of it. I'm going to put it in my safe now, and then let's write a letter to the Countess of Morcar and say we have her beautiful blue diamond here with us. Is he the jewel thief, maybe? No, I don't think he is. I believe he is an innocent man. I don't think he knew there was an expensive diamond in his goose, a jewel worth more than. But let's wait and see. Maybe Mr. Baker will answer our advertisement this evening, and then we can learn something about him. All right, I said. I can come back after work this evening. I'm very interested in the answer to the case. Good, replied Holmes. Dinner is at 7 o'clock.
I got to Baker Street at 6:30 that evening. There was a tall man already at Sherlock Holmes's front door when I came down the street. He was wearing a long winter coat and had a Scottish hat on his head. When I arrived next to him, the door opened. Mrs. Hudson, Holmes's housekeeper, said, "Good evening," to the two of us, and we went in and upstairs to Holmes's room. "Mr. Henry Baker, I believe," said Holmes to the man when he came in. "Please sit down." Holmes looked at me and smiled. "Ah, Watson, good. You are here too." Then he looked back at his other visitor. "Is that your hat, Mr. Baker?" Mr. Baker looked at the hat on the chair. "Yes, sir, that's my hat. There's no question about it." He was a big man with a big head, an intelligent face, and gray hair. I remembered Holmes's words about it. He was wearing a dirty old black coat with no shirt under it. But he spoke slowly, quietly, and carefully. I looked at him and listened to him, and I thought, yes, this is an intelligent man. He was rich once, but now he has no money, and things aren't easy for him. "We found your hat and your goose some days ago," said Holmes. "But we couldn't find you very easily, Mr. Baker. We didn't know your address. Why didn't you put an advertisement in the newspaper with your address in it?" "We waited and waited for an advertisement from you, but saw nothing." Mr. Baker smiled. "I'm sorry. Advertisements are expensive, and I haven't got a lot of money these days. I had once, but not now." He went on. "And, I thought those young men in Tottenham Court Road had my hat and my goose. And I didn't want to put an expensive advertisement in the newspaper for nothing." "I understand," said Holmes. "Now, before we say more, I must tell you something about your goose, Mr. Baker. I'm sorry, but, we ate it yesterday, you know." "You ate it?" said our visitor, and he stood up excitedly. "Yes, we didn't want it to go bad, you see, but we bought a nice new goose this morning for you. It's on the table there by the door. Is that all right for you?" "Ah, yes, said Mr. Baker happily. He sat down again. "And let's see. I think we have your old goose's feet, head, and everything from inside it in the kitchen. Do you want those?" The man laughed. No, he said. "But I'd like to take that nice new goose home with me. Thank you very much." Sherlock Holmes looked at me with a little smile. "Very well," he said to Mr. Baker. "There is your hat and there is your bird. Please take them. Oh, and before you go, can you tell me something? Where did you get your goose? I know a lot about geese, and that was a very good bird." I can tell you. Well, sir, said Baker. He stood up and took his hat and the goose in his hands. I got that bird at the Alpha, a hotel near the British Museum. This year, the owner of the hotel, Mr. Windigate, began a goose club. Every week, we all put 5 or 6 pence into a money box, and at Christmas time, we all had the money for a goose. With that, he said goodbye and left. Well, said my detective friend, that answers one question. Mr. Baker is not our diamond thief. Are you hungry, Watson? No, not very. Let's eat later then. We must go to the Alpha at once. We have to speak to Mr. Windigate tonight. Chapter 4. To Mr. Breckenridge. Holmes and I put on our coats and hats and went out into the cold winter street. The sky was dark over our heads. We walked east, and in a quarter of an hour we stood in front of the Alpha Hotel. Holmes opened the door, and we went in. In the hotel, the owner, Mr. Windigate, gave us some drinks. Have you got any geese? Holmes asked him. I ask because I know your geese are very good. Mr. Henry Baker told us all about your goose club. Ah, yes. But those geese weren't our geese. They came from a man with a little shop in a Covent Garden. Breckenridge is his name. Thank you, my good man, said Holmes. We finished our drinks, and then we walked out of the warm hotel and into the cold night again. Now for Covent Garden, said Holmes. And we walked down the street past the British Museum. Remember, Watson, it all started with a goose, but it finishes with 7 years in prison for young Mr. Horner. Maybe we can learn more about this interesting case in Mr. Breckenridge's shop. We walked to Covent Garden and soon came to Mr. Breckenridge's shop. Breckenridge and a boy were at the door. It was nearly time to close the shop. Good evening. It's a cold night, said Holmes. How can I help you? Asked Breckenridge. Holmes looked at the shop window. You haven't got any geese, I see, he said. There are some in that other shop. They're behind you. Ah, but I came to you because I hear your geese are very good. Breckenridge's birds are the best, he said. Who said that? The owner of the Alpha. Ah, yes. He had 24 of my geese 2 days before Christmas. They were very good birds too. Where did you get them? I'm not going to tell you, said Breckenridge angrily. Again and again, people come and talk to me about those geese, and I don't like it. I paid good money for them. I took them to the Alpha, and then I forgot all about them. And then all the questions started. Where are the geese? How much do you want for them? And who did you sell them to? Why are people interested in them? I don't know. They aren't the only geese in London, you know? I know, said Holmes. But who asked you all those questions before? Not me. I had nothing to do with that, you know. But now I want your help. We ate a goose at the Alpha, and I say it was a country goose. But my good friend Dr. Watson here says it was a London goose. Which of us is right? It's an important question. £5 goes to the winner. Well, then your friend is winner, said Breckenridge. That goose came from London. I can't believe that, said Holmes. £1 says I'm right. Very well, said Holmes, and he took out £1. I'm ready to give you £1. Show me your books. Breckenridge laughed. Get me the books, Bill, he said. The boy carried 2 books to him. Breckenridge opened the little one. This is my address book, he said. When people sell their gifts to me, their addresses go in here. Country people on the left and town people on the right. The numbers after every name are page numbers in my big book. Read out the 3rd name on the right, said Breckenridge. Mrs. Oakshott, 117 Brixton Road, number 249. Then Breckenridge opened the big book. This is my in and out book, he said. Let's look at page 249. Here we are, Mrs. Oakshott. What can you see for December 22nd? 24 geese from Mrs. O, said Holmes. All 24 to Mr. Windigate and the Alpha. There. What do you say now? Said Breckenridge. Holmes put his pound into Breckenridge's hand angrily. Let's go to the next chapter. Chapter 5. A weak little man. In the street, Holmes stopped. Suddenly he wasn't angry. He began to laugh. You see, Watson, he said. Breckenridge didn't want to tell me Mr. Oakshott's name and address at first. But later, when he saw he could easily get £1 from me, he told me everything. And he said something very interesting when he got angry. Did you hear? Other people are asking questions about those geese. Suddenly, there was a lot of noise from Mr. Breckenridge's shop behind us. We looked back at it. Breckenridge stood, tall and angry, in front of his shop door. A big little man stood in front of him in the street. Look, you! Breckenridge shouted. I don't want to hear any more about those geese. Mrs. Oakshott can come and speak to me when she wants, but not you. You have nothing to do with it. Did I get the geese from you? No, but one was my geese, I tell you, cried the little man. Then asked Mrs. Oakshott for it. But she told me
Ask Mr. Breckenridge for it. Well, that's nothing to do with me. I don't want to hear any more from you. Do you understand? Now go away. Breckenridge closed his shop door angrily, and the little man ran off down the dark street. Maybe we don't have to visit Mrs. Oakshott in Brixton Road after all, said Holmes to me quietly. Let's talk to that man. Maybe he can help us. Holmes walked quickly up behind the little man and put a hand on his shoulder. The man stopped and looked over his shoulder at us. His face was white. Who are you? What do you want? He asked weakly. Excuse me, said Holmes, but I heard your questions to that shop owner. I think I can help you. Who are you? And how can you help me? My name is Sherlock Holmes, and it's my job to know things other people don't know, but can't know anything about this. Excuse me, I know everything. Want to find 24 geese. Mrs. Oakshott of Brixton Road sold them to Mr. Breckenridge here. He sold them to Mr. Windigate, the owner of the Alpha, and Mr. Windigate sold them to the people in his goose club. Oh, sir, this is wonderful. I'm very happy to meet you, said the little man excitedly. You're right. I'm very interested in those geese. More than I can say. Why don't we go to a warm room in my house for a talk then? I don't like standing here in the cold street. Holmes put out his arm and a cab stopped for us. But before we go, can you please tell us your name? The little man looked at Holmes and then looked at me before he answered. John Robinson, I said. No, said Holmes quietly. We'd like to know your real name, please. The stranger's face changed from white to red. Very well, my real name is James Ryder, he said. Well, said Holmes. Assistant manager of the Cosmopolitan Hotel. Now let's get into the cab and go home. Then I can tell you everything you want to know. So we got into the cab and went home. Ryder was excited, but said nothing. Holmes didn't speak at all in the cab. So, we want to start the last chapter, chapter 6. 1 or 2 questions. When we arrived at 221B Baker Street, we got out of the cab and went in. When we were in the sitting room, Holmes spoke at last. Please sit down, Mr. Ryder. Now you want to know about those 24 geese, or maybe about one of those geese. You are interested in only one bird, I think. The white goose with a black tail. Oh, sir, Ryder said excitedly. It came here, and it was very interesting. We found something in it, the most wonderful thing. Here it is. Our visitor stood up weakly. Holmes opened his safe and took out the blue diamond. In his hand it was cold and beautiful. Ryder looked at the jewel but said nothing. Holmes spoke for him. "We know it was you, Ryder," I said. "Sit down and have some tea. You look very weak." I gave Ryder some tea. He sat down and drank it quickly and looked at Holmes. I saw he was afraid. "You don't need to tell me much," said Holmes. "I know nearly everything about the case. But I have one or two questions to ask. How did you hear of the contents of Morcar's blue diamond?" "Catherine Cusick, her maid, told me," said Ryder. "I see," Holmes went on. "So you and Cusick wanted to get the diamond and sell it for lots of money. You asked John Horner to come and repair the window because you knew he was being in prison. When he left, you took the diamond from the Countess's jewel box. Then he called the police. Because Horner has been in prison, they believe he was the thief. It was all very easy. Then..." "Oh, please," cried Ryder, now on the floor at the Holmes's feet. "I'm never going to do anything wrong again. Please don't tell the police. I don't want to go to prison." "Sit down in your chair," said Holmes coldly. "You're crying now, but did you feel sorry for young Horner? He knew nothing of this crime, but the police believed he was a diamond thief, and so he went to court, and he's now going to prison. All because of you. I can leave the country, Mr. Holmes. Then, when I don't go to court, Horner can leave prison. We can see about that later. But now please tell me, Mr. Ryder, how did the diamond get from the hotel into a goose? And how the goose get into a shop? And please tell the truth." Ryder began. "Police arrested Horner. I left the hotel with the diamond in my coat pocket. I didn't want to stay at the Cosmopolitan. Not with the police everywhere, looking at everything. So I went to my sister's house in South London. She lives in Brixton Road with her husband, Mr. Oakshott. I saw lots of police officers when I was going there. And when I got to Brixton Road, I was very scared." "What's the matter?" my sister asked. I told her about the diamond thief and about the police arresting Horner. Then I went into the garden to think. What could I do with the diamond now? I remembered my friend Maudsley. He started well, but he went bad, and in the end he went to prison for his crimes. Perhaps he knows about selling diamonds, I thought. So I decided to visit him at his home in Kilburn in North London. But how can I walk across London with the diamond? I thought. I can't have it in my pocket. Not with all those police officers in the streets. Then I looked down at the geese in the garden and I thought of something. I knew one of those geese was for me, for my Christmas dinner. So I decided to take my goose there and then. I quickly caught a big white goose with a black tail. Then I took the diamond from my pocket and put it into the bird's mouth.
I felt the gel go down its neck. With the diamond now inside the goose, I felt happy. I could walk to Kilburn and back easily. Then my sister came into the garden. "What are you doing with that goose?" she said. I put my bird down, and it ran off with the other geese. "That's the goose I want for Christmas," I said. "Very well, take it with you," she said. "Well, Mr. Holmes, I caught that bird, killed it, and took it with me to Kilburn. There I told Maudsley all about the diamond, and he got a knife and opened the goose. But we couldn't find the diamond. Maybe I didn't catch the right goose." I quickly ran back to my sister's house and went into the garden. There weren't any geese there. "Where are the geese, Maggie?" I said. "In Mr. Breckenridge's house, in Covent Garden." "Were there two birds with black tail?" I asked. "Yes, there were, James," she said, "and to my eyes, one was no different from the other. I understand it all then. The diamond was inside the other goose with the black tail." I ran to Covent Garden at once and went to Mr. Breckenridge's shop. But the geese weren't there, and when I asked about them, he told me I sold them all at once. "But you must tell me, where are they now?" I asked again and again, but he never told me. "You and Dr. Watson heard him earlier tonight, Mr. Holmes. He never answered my questions. Now my sister thinks I'm a terrible brother. I'm a thief. I'm going to get a bad name, and I never got any money from my crime at all. Am I going to go to prison?" He put his head in his hands and started to cry. Holmes didn't speak for a long time. Then, in the end, he stood up and opened the door. "Get out," he said. "Oh, thank you, said Ryder, and he ran out of the door, down the stairs, out into the street, and away. "After all, Watson," said Holmes, "it's not my job to do the police's work, and young Horner's going to be all right. Ryder isn't going to go to court now. If Ryder isn't there, the police have no witness to say Horner was a thief. Maybe I'm doing something bad, but I don't believe it. I think I'm helping Ryder to be a better man. Send him to prison now, and you make him into a thief for life. But now he's scared. He's not going to go wrong again. We found the solution to the crime, and that makes me happy. And it's Christmas after all, and Christmas is a time to be nice to the other people, I believe. And now, Watson, let's ask Mr. Hudson to give us some dinner." Thank you so much, guys. I hope you enjoyed the story. Now, we want to find the meaning of the difficult words in the story. Let's get started again. In chapter 1, there was an old hag on a chair near him, and he had a magnifying glass in his hand. What is a magnifying glass? Magnifying glass is a piece of curved glass that makes objects look larger than they are. So let's go to the next word. Is from a crime. What is the meaning of crime? Crime means killing someone or taking money or a valuable thing from someone. The young man with his walking stick. Walking stick is a long thin piece of wood that you use it to help you to walk. Did Mr. Baker put an advertisement in the newspaper about his hat and goose? Okay, the advertisement here means a picture or a short film or song that tries to persuade people to buy a product or service. Let's go to the next word. The owner of this hat is an intelligent man. Intelligent means very quick thinking or very smart. He was once rich and he is now poor. Poor is opposite of rich, someone without money. There was a beautiful blue diamond in it. A very expensive stone usually has no color. Let's go to the chapter 2. This is the contents of Morcar's blue diamond. Contents means the wife of a rich, important man. Disappear means here. It disappeared a week ago. To go away suddenly. The next word is jewel. It's very expensive jewel. What is the meaning of jewel? Jewel is again an expensive stone, like the diamond. And the next word, James Ryder, the assistant manager of the hotel. Assistant manager is an important job in a hotel. Catherine Cusick, the accountant's maid. Maid here means a woman who works in a rich person's house. Later, Detective Bradstreet spoke to the court. Court is a place that the police take someone here that they think she or he did something wrong. The next one, thief. You're a diamond thief. This is a person who takes something from someone without asking. And the next word, prison. Prison here is in this sentence. Horner went to prison once before for being a thief. Prison is a place where people must stay there when they do something wrong. The case goes to High Court next week. The next one, High Court. Here we have lots of difficult words. High Court is the most important court in a country. Here, but already there are many terrible crimes because of it. Terrible means very bad or awful. Sentence. I'm going to put it in my safe now. Safe is a box that people put some expensive and valuable things in it to keep them away from thief. Innocent means someone who didn't do anything wrong. The next word, a housekeeper. Mr. Hudson, Holmes's housekeeper. Housekeeper means a woman who looks after a rich person's house. Okay, let's go to the next part. Next part, yes, nothing in chapter 3. Go to chapter 4. Chapter 4. Okay, they are so easy for you. The next word is no. I think okay. We don't have anything in chapter 4. It was so easy for you. And 5. Okay, here I think weak is a good word. A weak little man stood in front of him in the street. Weak means not strong. It's opposite of strong. And the next word, shout. Shout here. Look, you. Breckenridge shouted. Shout means to say something loudly and angrily. Okay, the next word is cab in this sentence. Holmes put out his arm and the cab stopped for us. Cab means a taxi. And I think the other words are so easy for you. And let's go to the last chapter, chapter 6. Here, do you know what is the meaning of tail? A white goose with a black tail. Tail is a part of the animal's body that is long thing at the back of the animal's body. Arrested means to take person to prison. The next word is witness here in this sentence. If Ryder isn't there, the police have no witness to say Horner was the thief. Witness means a person who saw a crime. And the last difficult word is solution. Solution is in this sentence. Here. We found the solution of the crime, and that makes me happy. Solution means the answer of the problem. When you solve the problem, you can find the solution for this problem. If you enjoyed this story and this video, please subscribe to my channel, like me, and hit the button.